in takt planning, the way that LeanTakt does it, which is not the way everybody does it, is we create takt wagons or box cars that are leveled, which is really important. So if you have a normal sequence, and up here is a normal sequence where you have a normal size activity, larger amounts, normal, small, a whole lot of work. What the problem is that when you have a sequence that's not leveled in a non-takted system, you're going to only go as fast as your slowest trade. Unless you say, okay, takt wagon number 1, we're going to bring that down. Takt wagon number 2, we're going to split these up into 2. So that's 1, 2. Takt wagon number 3, that can come down. That goes at the same speed. These two, there's too little work. We can combine those two. So that's 1 and 2 into the same takt wagon. This one has to be broken up into 1, 2, 3. It's only when we get these things leveled, going the same speed, the same distance apart, that we're really able to leverage and get flow in construction. If you see a takt plan, most of the time people would say, well, what is a takt train? And they would say, well, the takt train is here from left to right. This 35 through 45 sequence, this is a takt train. Actually, it's not. And I'm going to show you that right now. Takt trains flow from the top of the page to the bottom of the page in a takt plan. So let's take this example, and this is the first part of it. This is takt wagon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then there's caboose, the engine and the caboose, week 1. In takt zone 1, week 1, you have that first takt wagon. Week 2, you can see that you're running down the page. That now we have takt zone 2, week 2, and then week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6. You see how the train is running down the page? So what am I saying by it's running down the page? What I'm saying is a takt plan, all it is a record in time of where that train was by location in the various weeks. But the actual train is running through the locations. It's running down the page. And so this is really a key thing to understand. I'll showcase this in a minute. So week 7, week 8, week 9, week 10, week 11, week 12. Well, hold on a minute. These aren't recording down here anymore. What happened? They finished and they're going to a different job. So that train is probably still working, or the trades may be split up and they recoupled to different other types of trains for different jobs, but that train is still moving through. It's just they're not on our project anymore. So week 13, week 14, week 15, week 16, week 17, week 18. So a takt plan is the visual representation of where a train was by zone in time. So trains do not run from left to right. They actually run vertically down the page. Now, why would that be important to know? Here are some consequences to that knowledge. If you see a nice phase, that means you have a single train. People ask all the time, Jason, takt planning, will it work on my project? Probably not. My project's all cut up. Well, whenever you see a really beautiful takt plan, it's because it only has one train. There are some other things we learn about this. If you have a takt plan here that has the same wagon broken up but behind each other, you know that half of your crew on the first week isn't busy and that half of your crew on the last week isn't busy. If you ever see these phases stacked on top of each other, you know you have two trains. If you ever see something like this where you have a normal phase over here but you have one of the zones overlap, again, that means that for this one zone, you need another train of workers. Maybe it's a smaller crew size, but you can't expect that first train to do all of the work. If you see this where you have just one of these takt wagons duplicated, you know that you have one train running through the system, but you're going to need one wagon or one crew separate to come in here and do that work. If you have a long takt plan or phase, you know that you're going fairly slow. If you have a really stacked one, you know that you're going fairly fast with disconnected takt wagon. If we're able to visualize it in its proper light, where the takt train actually comes vertically down the page, then that means that we know a number of other things. So not only do we know this, but we also know that you can have different formats of takt plan. Why do we have such a beautiful takt plan here? Somebody with a complex job would say, well, I don't know that that would work on my project. What's going on here? You have a single train coming through this for this single phase here. That's why it looks beautiful. If you're like, Jason, I get that you're teaching about takt planning. It won't work for my project. I don't know that it would ever work for my project. This is what I'm dealing with. That's not correct. This is a single train phase. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more complex. LeanTakt, Kevin, and professionals in the industry will create takt plans that look like this. First and foremost, you have the key ingredient. It's broken out by area and it's broken out by time up here on the top. But you see that there isn't this beautiful, just one back behind each other system and sequence here. So what is happening? This right here is a train. This right here is a train. These little oranges are a train. This green is a train. What happens is in some projects, they're so complex, you will have what's called a multi-train takt phase. And so if you ever hear somebody that's teaching about takt planning and they're like, hey, no, it has to look like this, it's because they only only know how to do a single train takt phase. In this one, we probably have 5 different takt trains flowing through the different phases. And the way I like to look at it is, you remember that one car, that one traffic circle? In this example, it's like you have multiple traffic circles going the same speed, the same distance apart. But what you have to do, if you have multiple traffic circles, the key is to focus on their intersection and to make sure that they intersect properly. Just like in this takt phase, focus on the intersections properly. All this is a multi-train takt phase. Once we understand this, it opens up the world. It opens up all of these other formats, and it opens up all of these different ways of looking at takt planning. So again, why does a civil project look different than a normal takt plan? Because this right here, this storm sewer, is a single train, and it's broken up by area, right? The most important part of takt planning. And this storm drain it's a separate train. The water line is a separate train. So this is a 3-train takt plan. Why do concrete takt plans look a little bit different? Why do the exteriors look a little bit different? It's because you can have either one or multiple actual takt trains per phase. So this is probably my favorite example right here. You can go faster by breaking this up in this type of a job by allowing your areas to have multiple rows and schedule those processes on different takt times. So the most important thing, and I actually wrote it down here for us, location-based planning has always been first. Takt time is always second, meaning that the most important thing that you can do for your schedules is to break it out by location and to level those locations first, and then to work on the takt time second, and realize you can either have a single train takt phase or you can have a multiple train takt phase. That enables us to open up our world to where we can, and here's the point, we can schedule consistent buildings like high rises, bed towers, research laboratories, data centers. We can schedule really detailed finished projects on really high-end complex projects with multi-train takt planning. We can schedule civil because we know that the storm drain, the storm sewer, the water, and the paving are all different trains. We can schedule that. The most important thing is to have it broken out by zone. We can schedule concrete, which in Excel is still the best way to schedule concrete. We can schedule these broken out like a Gantt chart, but again, we've broken it down by area, which is different than a Gantt chart. We're takting it out. And we can schedule exteriors who don't have the same duration by production area just as well as we can anything else, because we now know this information. So does takt apply to any size project? Yes, but you may need multiple trains and you may need to explore different formats. The key is, if you have a multi-train takt plan, here are some rules that you want, and Kevin, help me out with this if I miss something. You want as few trains as possible, and Kevin came up with this, but no fewer, meaning don't try to lock yourself into just one when you really need 2 or 3. You want to magnetize the trains, meaning that, like, if I look at this example right here, for instance, let's look at the 39. We want anything that's on the same rhythm, the 39 and the 28, we want to magnetize this and package those as much as we can together. Number 3, we want to pull the train lines together as much as possible. So if you're doing a multi-train takt plan, which you might need a little bit of help, which we'll cover here in a minute, actually detailing, you want as many as you need, but no fewer, and you want to reduce the number. Once you have those train lines, those flows, that trade flow, the flow unit, you want to magnetize as much associated work with it as you possibly can, and you want to pull these lines as close together as you possibly can. And if you still end up with a little bit of this blank space, so be it, as long as you've analyzed your overall schedule. Even if you have a single train or multiple trains, the trains follow the same pattern. They start and end with a rhythm. So they're scheduled on a rhythm. They are consistent, which means that we attempt to schedule the same amount of manpower and materials and information in each one of them so that we can run that football play over and over and get good at it and win the Super Bowl. If we don't repeat similar sequences or processes, we never get good at it, we never optimize it, and we never win the Super Bowl. And then, and we'll talk about this in a minute, in your schedule, once you have it scheduled on a rhythm, once you have it consistent and leveled out, you have to have buffers inside your schedule to absorb delays, quality defects, and variation. No schedule, and if you're an owner, this still applies. If you're an architect, it still applies. No schedule should ever be created without buffers, ever. That's why I don't even like thinking about a critical path. It's just not something that we should do.